Hi, you all. Um, Welcome to this session of Codependent No More, commented. This is a 20 to 30 minutes talk about. Now we're in chapter 9, and so we're gonna go over, and it gets better and better every time, I think. It's like a lot of useful information, and so I'm really excited to share this with you. And I usually start with like some input of my own experience, like whatever I've been thinking about, and so that's gonna be too part of this today. And I want to start with setting up my intention for this session, which is to be of service of all of you and myself in process of healing, and that we can see what we need to see, and yes, just to transform it. So let's get that first. And so, well, I wanted to start telling you about a dream I had, because I think it's a good process of learning about myself. And so, you know, I am a trauma survivor. As such, there is a part of me who doesn't remember what happened. So this is very common. It's like sort of like a mechanism for us to stay safe. And so there is a lot of ways in which trauma survivors do not remember. Hola, Mauro. Do not remember the whatever difficult happened to them, you know? And so I'm one of those people who doesn't remember what happened. And so it's interesting because then you go in your life, you suppressed this part of you that is very difficult, but then you live without knowing why you act as you act. And so it took me a lot of time to like understand actually that I was having like these signals of anxiety and like trauma. And the only reason why I get to know that was because I was reading books where I would see all the symptoms, and I would be like, oh, I think I have those things, but I don't remember anything. And so what's happening, you know? And so in that sense, like I started my healing process, and as a trauma survivor, there is a lot of things that happen during dreams. And so all my dreams are nightmares usually. There is a lot of like darkness, like night, and like persecution and violence and stuff like that. And so the thing is like my friends are telling me like, oh, I just have this dream where I was like happy, or like I was meeting this person and this other. Hola, Laura. And I don't have that. I have a lot of nightmares and like dreams that are not pleasant, you know. But what during this like healing process, I'm starting to have positive dreams. And so last night I had this dream that I was swimming in like an ocean full of like light, and the sun was out, and there were like dolphins and whales, and I could see them like under the water. And so it was very good because it spoke about healing for me, but also something I wanted to talk to you about, which is self-knowledge. And so as codependents, a lot of us actually don't know ourselves to like to some extent, because we had to became adults when we were children and take care of our parents, you know. And so as we were growing up, we didn't know what we like. We didn't have these like expressions of childhood where you can do whatever you want, but we were more like parent like. And so part of us, which is immature, didn't express itself. And so one of the things that I want to talk about is self-knowledge, because it's very important for us to rediscover ourselves. We think that we know each other really good, like that I know myself good because I live here in my thoughts that are like a trap for me. But actually, all that goes unconscious, you know, and all the things that I don't see like with my logic, all of that is part of me that I don't know about myself. So codependents don't know much about themselves until they start to do the work. And as I was telling you with my dream, one of the ways in which I got to know myself better was reading these books, or like reading things about like types of people, or like characteristics of codependency, but also astrology, for example. You know, astrology, if you are into that, is a very good tool for you to know yourself better. And I mean, there's so many ways in which you can do that. You can meditate. I don't know, like whatever works for you, but it's just like this idea that you gotta find a way to like know yourself better. And I think that's really powerful, because then you know what you like, what you need, and not what others need, and like that you have to like give just because they are asking you to do that. So that was the first thing I wanted to share. And then I wanted also to tell you that this chapter has like specific really useful tools for us to get to know ourselves better, I think. And so I want to like recognize that and like have that sort of lens with it, which is like this process of healing is a rediscovery of yourself, like you getting in love with yourself. And so I think that's really powerful and beautiful. And so I wanted to like give that like to this that spin of like self-knowledge. Cool. So let's go and go over the chapter now. I think one of the things that is mentioned here since the beginning is that the codependents are people that think that they cannot live without a person, like they like cannot survive if they like leave a relationship or stuff like that. And I think that's like the classic and like more powerful, well-known sort of idea of codependency. But I've found myself that some of us actually are loners, like people that don't have relationships for a long time. So what happens is that when we get into a relationship, we get obsessed with the person. Everything like it's around this person, and it's very intense. A lot of anxiety is going on. And so some people just like, cling to that feeling and like stay forever with that feeling. But for some of us, the feeling is so intense that we can not actually sustain relationships. So one friend of mine was telling me like, well, if you're codependent, why is it that it's been 2 years since you're single? And I was just like, I mean, there is a way in which the fact that I cannot sustain a relationship for too long has to do with my codependency, because everything is so intense and so difficult that I don't even have the opportunity to cope with a human being having mistakes, or like a normal relationship. And normal, I mean like, and this is one thing that she's saying here, is that when we are codependent, people just can't stay. I mean, even if you're choosing the right person, because like of course we do this thing where we choose the wrong person for us, but even if we do choose the correct person, because we're so obsessed with them, that drives them away. And because you're so obsessed, life is really hard for us. And so every little thing, it's a big like issue emotionally. And so it is so intense that we just cannot deal with it. So we prefer to stay alone. So of course, like abstinence is like a way of like seeing if you're like doing your work, if you're like a sex addict or a love addict. But sometimes loneliness means that you cannot deal with a relationship, and so you have to stay alone, not by choice, but just because it's too intense not to be alone. And so I just wanted to give that like other perspective, because some people are like, codependents are always in a relationship, but that's not true. And like as a person that like doesn't do that, but I know my codependency, just wanted to share like that perspective as well. And just invited you to see like where you stand, in that like sort of like always in a relationship, or maybe just have to choose to be alone because it's too much. And so that's something I wanted to start with, because this chapter starts with this idea that you have to live with someone, or like have someone, and it has some like variations, but something important that she says is like, whether codependents appear fragile and helpless, or sturdy and powerful, most of us are frightened, needy, vulnerable children who are aching and desperate to be loved and cared for. And so, remember, I was telling you, like, codependents usually are like the ones that have it together, the strong ones, the capable ones. And that's true, but there is like another side of this, which is the like sort of codependency where you feel really helpless and like weak. And so it's sort of like the same coin, you know. So you're there for people, you're very like strong, but then you also have like a lot of issues going on, and so you're weak in other ways. And that's interesting. And she says here, like, well, people have abandoned us, so remember about childhood, emotionally and physically. They have rejected us, abused us, let us down. People will never be there for us, is what we think. So we already have talked about how it's difficult for us to receive help or ask for help. And this is an issue about trust. Like, we don't trust about being loved and being cared for. But deep down, it's also about feeling that we don't deserve that, because when we were children, we didn't receive that. So some part of us was like, if you think it's you that doesn't deserve love, maybe you can change that and control that. That is easier than accepting that our parents didn't care for us or love us. So it's like, for the child, it's easier to like blame themselves than like blame their parents. And so that sounds like really like what? But if you think about it, yeah. Like, I would rather think as a kid that it was my fault that my parents were incapable of parenting correctly, you know? And so that is something to look at as well. And so, and she says here that we see others so powerful and assured. And so I was thinking, like, how this relates to codependency, because we are caretakers, so we see the other like weak or something. So how is it that we see others like stronger than us? And I was thinking that it has to do with, at least in my case, it has to do with the fact that the person that is a mess, we are like, oh my god, this person is capable of like taking risks and not caring about others, like freedom sort of thing. And we don't. We are so together, we are so organized, we're so like helping and like, you know. And so there's a way, very twisted way, in which we can see others like more powerful just because they are a mess. And so I think that has to do with it. Maybe. That's how I see it, I don't know. And then the thing is that we need them to depend on us. And we have talked about it already. Because if the person that you're relating with don't depend on you, so why they are with you? Or like, it's like a coin that you interchange, like this is a value. So my friends are with me because I can help them, or like they need me. But if we are just human beings sharing a life, like some part of our codependency, like that doesn't make any sense. Like, you need to find someone who needs you so that they would never leave you. And so that is the problem, of course. And something that she says here is that and I think this is important, is we as humans deserve like healthy stuff, such as someone that we can rely on, acceptance, approval. So that is like, because sometimes when we're talking about codependency, it's just like, no, you shouldn't need anybody, you shouldn't like need any like love or like appreciation. That is not true. The problem with codependency is that we only need that and we get obsessed with it, which is the part that is twisted. But as human beings, of course you deserve love, attention, care, support, like that is all healthy. When you get obsessed about it, it's not. And so that is a problem, I guess. Yeah. The cool thing of this is that she's gonna give us like some advices, and so I want to go over those really quickly because I think it's really great. But before that, she says, and I want us to think about our lives here as codependents, that we keep looking for like escape plans or like ways in which to stop like this suffering sort of thing. And so codependents are very studious, or like I've noticed that we have like lots of projects going on, like we have studied a lot, or like we have different like degrees or specialities, or like we're very capable of many things. And part of it is a gift, and part of it is because when we feel trapped in a relationship that is codependent, like with parents, with children, with our romantic partner or friends, we try to like find ways to escape. And so we get all obsessed with work. So codependence could be really successful at work, or just like keep studying and studying like a lot of degrees, or things like that, or workaholics. And so think about your escape plan. Like, what is it that you think you have done just because you feel that your relationship with someone is just too much? And I think that's really interesting to think about. And of course we have the worst case scenario is like suicide and stuff like that, like thinking that this life is so difficult, because it is for us, that it's just not worth it. Or we get like sort of like fighting with God, or like blaming God about having these issues that we're having. So lots of codependent people have lost their faith. And so I also invite you, if you're like I don't want to think about God, or like that concept doesn't relate to me so much, to like sort of like look inside and see if that has to do with codependency or not. Like, could be not, but like it could be true. And so that's an invitation. And okay, I think we're good for the like the advice. But before that, there is something I always say, which is and this is, I swear to God, is very useful. If you have a relationship that you think it could be codependency, so it could be like a romantic partner or a friend or your mother or your child, see and like do a list of the characteristics of this person and compare that with your parents, with your mom and dad. And so let's say if I have a girlfriend, I will list her like characteristics, and then I will do the same for my mom and my dad and see which ones they share. Because I swear to God that we project our parents in our like codependency. And so if my mom or my dad cause me codependency, I'm gonna try to look for people to date that have those things, because inside of me I want to win this time. It's like a cycle. So I want to have this person that resembles my parent and win over them. And so just think about that, like compare and see. Like everyone says like that you're dating your parents, and we're like, no, but then what happened if you actually sit down and see if that's true or not? And I think that could help a lot. So now let's go to the advice. So the number one, she says, is finish business from our childhoods as best as we can. Grieve, get some perspective, figure out how events from our childhoods are affecting what we're doing now. So again, and I have a friend of mine that has like a profile online for like a dating app, and one of the things that she lists is have you resolved your childhood trauma, or like have you at least tried to like do that? And this is what she's saying here. Because of how much this comes from childhood, you gotta work on that. And grief is a big part of it. Like I myself, for example, have like an absent parent, and it took me like 20 years to like actually cry over that absence. Like I didn't want it to see it, and so I kept looking for partners who would like abandon me as my parent did. And after I started like actually feeling the sadness of the abandonment, a lot of things had changed in my life for good. And so what is it that you're not grieving yet that you gotta like resolve? And that's very useful. Then number two is nurture and cherish that frightened, vulnerable, needy child inside us. And so this seems funny, but I mean, I think even if we recover from codependency, the needy child will always be there. Like the reactions probably will always be there. And so we have to learn how to like cherish that part of you, like accept it and cherish that part. And something I told you I was doing this like ACT group therapy, and one of the things that we do, and at the beginning I thought it was silly, but is to talk to those parts of us. And so, for example, when I feel anxiety, I would be like, hey, anxiety, I know you're here. I understand that you're here because of this and that, and I'm sorry you're feeling like that. And like some sort of like self-talking, it's been really useful for me. But any way that you find like useful is just like acknowledging the parts of you that are hurting or insecure, and so that is good. And we have here the idea of comfort the child. So of course we're not gonna act from the child, but you can comfort the child and like, you know, like have a moment for that. I have in my phone, like my screen is a picture of myself when I was 2 years old, and I constantly look at it just to like feel how I can like feel love to that child, towards that child, and it's like part of my therapy. So I think it could be useful. Number 3 is stop looking for happiness in other people, which sounds obvious, but it's not. Our source of happiness as well-beings is not inside others, it's inside us. And so how is it that you can decenter your life in others and like center it in yourself? Do you know what are the things that you like the most? Do you know what are your limits, your boundaries? Do you know what you like and dislike? All of these things that I was telling you about, like self-knowledge, this is what here it means. Is like, if you know you like something, do it instead of like being so obsessed with other people. And so that's good, a good one. Number 4, we can learn to depend on ourselves. Maybe other people haven't been there for us, but we can be here for us. This is this is a beautiful thought. Is that we might have been abandoned before, but now we keep abandoning ourselves. You know, when you pair up with someone that is emotionally unavailable and you keep in that relationship and keep hurting, you are not there for you. You have left yourself. If you give more weight to the opinion of others than yours, you have abandoned yourself. If you are people pleasing, and so you do things just because you want to be accepted and seen, you have let yourself down. If you're obsessed with helping someone to like figure out their lives and have a job or change job or have a house or not have it, or you know, you have left yourself down. Which of course, like, you can be there for your friends, your partner, blah blah blah, but you're the first person you have to look at. What is it that you need, instead of like being with the outside, you know? So again, people pleasers, we are people pleasers. So stop doing that and see whatever actually you want to do, and like stay with yourself. The number 5 is we can depend on God. So this is, I was telling you, some of the codependency issues is like at some point we would be like, God doesn't exist because my life is so hard. And that's okay, it's part of the process. Or you're just not a believer, which I respect. But if you believe in God or like in a higher power, this is very useful to know that you're not alone, that like God is with you. And God could be like inside yourself, or like you can be the source of divinity if you want, but like some sort of like a spiritual connection is very useful. I think that's really important. And then we have the last one, which is strive for undependence. Begin examining the ways we are dependent emotionally and financially on the people around us. This is so interesting because a lot of codependents are very successful, and so that's how they can take care of others. But some of us struggle a lot financially, and we keep depending on other people, being our parents or donations for the community, or you know, like always like having issues with money speaks about something that it's that you are having trouble receiving. So I have had a lot of financial issues my whole life, not much now, thanks God, but I know that there was a part of me that still wanted to depend on my parents, maybe people around me. Like, I don't know, that there was something, because if you actually heal that part, you can have the resources you need. So if you're someone who struggles with money a lot, see what's going on there. And if you use your money to support others and not yourself, also look at that, like what is going on there. And I think that's very useful. And in that sense, I think she closes the chapter talking about how real power comes from feeling our feelings, not from ignoring them. And so, as codependents, we know that something is not right, but we ignore that and we keep going. So, don't do that. If you have something, a hint, or look at that and what is it? Why is that I'm feeling this is not okay? And I think that is very telling about what you need to see, And she ends with a very nice thought, which is you can get through dark situations, you can take care of yourself and trust yourself one day at a time. So one day at a time is like one of the slogans of like the 12-step programs, but I think it's very useful, which is like little by little, every day you keep going and working on yourself, and it's gonna be fine. So that's pretty cool. So to close this conversation here, she has an activity where she puts all the characteristics of love, like true love, and then addiction, and you gotta see which one is which. So I'm not gonna go over that, but if you want, this is very useful. It's on page 110 and 111. And of course, I picked one relationship because now I'm single, but I picked one and I was seeing, and yeah, I mean, all of the addiction part was a yes, and so that was pretty sad, but it just tells us about where we're at. And yeah, I just wanted to finish remembering this idea of like, what are the things you're doing to know yourself better? And it could be astrology, it could be meditation. I am doing like past life regression and like Akashic record reading, whatever works for you. Even reading a book such as this one, not to like judge yourself, but to get yourself to know yourself better. Just think about it. What is it that you're doing to fall in love with yourself again? And that's it. Thank you all. See you next Wednesday.